Hi guys, yeah, sorry to be seeing you like this again, but I hope you're getting something from these lessons and I hope you're learning something. Alright, so I'm gonna start by going over very quickly over last week's work, on the week before and last week's work. I have marked it, so if you are unsure about what is happening, go have a look there, or leave me a little comment on your work, and I can go back and have a look at it when I go do your marking. But hopefully this will clear anything up, and you'll have an idea of how to do your corrections. Okay, so starting with 4.1, write a sentence to describe the function of each of these parts. So your trachea, it's over here. It's kind of your windpipe. It allows the air in and out of your lungs through your mouth. So anything along those lines, I was happy with. Your bronchus takes your air in and out of your trachea from your lungs or to your lungs, and it splits it into your two lungs and gets split further by your bronchioles into the different lobes. But yeah, basically, if you say anything about splitting it between the lungs, I was happy with that answer. Then gaseous exchange. Name the red pigment inside of red blood cells that helps to carry oxygen. That's your hemoglobin. Name the large blood vessels that carries blood from the heart to the lungs. That was your pulmonary artery. Then use what you know about particle theory and explain how oxygen diffuses from an air sac into the blood. I left a little note for most of you. I really liked Kai's answer, so if you're having issues and you need a little bit more insight, have a look at that answer. I think the biggest point is that you need to talk about the concentration gradient. So air that's entering your lungs has a higher concentration of oxygen than your red blood cells entering your lungs. And because of that concentration gradient, because there's a higher concentration in the lungs than there is in the capillaries with your red blood cells, the oxygen naturally wants to move into your red blood cells, and the reverse is true for your carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide coming into your lungs through your mouth is going to have a lower concentration than the carbon dioxide that is in your red blood cells. So it's naturally going to want to move from that higher concentration to lower concentration. Okay, and that's what we mean by particle theory. Talk about how these things are vibrating. Talk about how the concentration gradients are affecting them and their movements. And so yeah, I just was looking for a little bit more of an in-depth explanation from most of you. And then the walls of the air sacs and the capillaries are both very thin. Suggest how this helps the gaseous exchange to take place. It just means that it reduces the distance over which your diffusion from inside to outside or outside to inside needs to happen. That distance is shorter and therefore more efficient. Okay. Aerobic respiration. Name the two substances that are made when glucose reacts with oxygen inside a cell. I was looking for water and carbon dioxide, but I would be happy for you to say energy as well, but as long as you're naming two different things that are being made, because they are specific, they want two things. Use what you know about digestion and the human circulatory system to describe how glucose gets to the cells in your muscle. So I was looking for you to understand that the glucose starts by being absorbed in your small intestines, by your small intestines, then it goes into your blood system. It can be stored in your liver, but most of the time it just goes straight from your small intestine into the cells where it's needed all around your body through your circulatory system. It's not stored in your red blood cells or your white blood cells. It's just carried around in your blood plasma. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Then it's pretty much the same use what you know about the gas exchange in the human circulatory system to describe how oxygen gets to a cell in a muscle. Kind of the same deal. You just have to say now it gets, instead of your small intestine dissolving your food, this is happening in your lungs. The oxygen is being breathed into your lungs and then absorbed into your bloodstream, where it's carried by your red blood cells to wherever it's needed, like in this case your cells in a muscle. Explain the difference between your respiration and breathing. I was happy with this. Most of you said that the breathing part is a mechanical process where you're just exchanging gases, whereas respiration is a chemical process that leads to the formation of energy and water and carbon dioxide. Now I was mostly happy with that. Which parts which are the hottest parts in the photograph? It'll be anything where this camel is, and yeah, you can tell that by reading the caption that the whiter or the yellow parts are the warmer bits, and the surroundings of the animal are kind of the cooler bits, because you can see that by the different colors that are being displayed here. Explain why these parts are hotter than their surroundings. It's because this camel, is undergoing cellular respiration. It's taking the energy that it's eaten, or the food that it's eaten, and turning it into energy using the process of respiration. So it looks a little bit, it's producing energy which produces heat, which makes it look much warmer than all of its surroundings. Okay. Then keeping fit. Cool. Explain why each of the effects described in the bullet points above would make it more difficult for you to do exercise. So I made a point for those of you that didn't answer this correctly, but you do actually have to go back and go to each bullet point, and you do have to tell me what's happening at each bullet point. Tell me, okay, the extra mass of their body means that more energy is required to move around. So doing exercise will be more difficult because they have extra weight on their bodies, so it does make moving around cost more energy to make it happen. These people might have their hearts will be needing to do a whole lot more pumping, more pressure, because they generally just do have a larger volume, and that means that the blood needs to be pushed around a larger body, and so the heart is under more pressure when they do exercise. Space inside the arteries gets narrower because fat deposits build up inside, so that can put pressure on your arteries, and it can lead to heart disease and in the end a heart attack. So yeah, describe how each one of these is going to affect you when you're doing more exercise. You're going to need to be moving more mass around, which makes it harder to do. Your heart is going to be doing far more work to push blood around the body, which is larger, and it's also going to have to deal with the fact that the arteries are more clogged up, so it's going to have to increase the amount of pressure that it is producing for the rest of the body during exercise because of these fatty deposits. Okay, but please read your question properly and answer it properly. If it tells you to use each bullet point, use each bullet point. Okay. Explain why a professional sports person often has a diet that contains. Now, this one as well. Answer the whole question. Don't just do one, like an overarching question. First one is, why does an athlete's diet contain protein? Proteins are there to repair and build new cells in the body. So to repair any kind of damage that might have happened from the previous day's workouts, and help to build muscle for the next day. Carbohydrates such as rice or pasta just before competition. This is to provide an energy store that they can burn through during the event. Cigarettes and health. Okay. Explain why smokers find it very hard to give up on smoking, because nicotine is very addictive. Some people smoke low tar cigarettes. Discuss whether or not this is a good idea. I think one person said it right, that like, no, it's not a good idea because it's still hurting your body, but it is still better than smoking full tar cigarettes. So anything along those lines. Compare the appearance of lung tissues in the photograph, in two photographs. So what you can see here, each one of these little pockets is like a cross section. So each one of those little pockets is supposed to be an alveoli. And here you can see that because of all the damage, and what happens is that there's like literal scar tissue that builds up on your alveoli. They become larger, but by becoming larger, they become less dense, and therefore there's a lower surface area for gases exchange to take place over. So yeah, You got lots of little alveoli that all together add up to a greater surface area for gaseous exchange to take place, and you've got a smoker's lung that has bigger alveoli that aren't as efficient at doing gaseous exchange because the surface area overall has decreased. Okay. Then compare the other. We've got done that. Most professional sportsmen and sportswomen do not smoke. Explain why. This is because it affects their ability to take in oxygen and therefore to carry out respiration. So it's reducing their ability to effectively metabolize the food that they take in and the energy that is produced from that food. Okay, the end of unit questions, I haven't marked it because I want to just go through it with you really quickly. Respiration is a chemical reaction that happens inside of a cell. Copy and complete the word equation for respiration. So you're going to have glucose and oxygen and carbon dioxide producing water here. This reaction is known as aerobic respiration. Explain why it is described as aerobic. It's because it takes place in the presence of oxygen. Anaerobic respiration is something like fermentation, where glucose is also broken down, but not fully, but there is still a release of energy without the presence of oxygen. In each of the groups, state only one statement is correct. Choose the correct statement. And write down the key. Okay. Every living cell respires. Only animal cells respire. The way in which a plant cell respires is called photosynthesis. Yeah. Let's say C. Every living cell respires. Yeah, because some cells. Yeah, I'd say C. C is fine. Okay, in this case, expiration, breathing out air, is carbon dioxide. Expired air contains more carbon dioxide than inspired air. Expired air contains more oxygen than inspired air. So it's not A, because it's not just carbon dioxide, but it does contain a little bit more carbon dioxide than inspired air. So here, in this case, it's going to be B. Respiration means moving your muscles to draw in. Respiration means moving your muscles to draw air into your lungs. Respiration means diffusion of gases between air sacs and layer. No. Respiration means the release of energy from glucose inside the cells. C. The diagram shows an air sac and a blood capillary. Copy the diagram and label it the blood capillary and the wall of the air sac. So let me just draw this while we're doing this. So you've got your, I'm not going to write it out, but just follow to what I'm pointing at and what I'm saying. This is your blood capillary, this like yellow vein thing, and then your wall of your air sac is over here, like this thing over here. Okay. Then draw 2 red blood cells in the correct place on your diagram. So anywhere on this like yellow track, which is your capillary, you can have a little red blood cell anywhere there. Draw an arrow to show the direction in which the oxygen diffuses. So let me change colors here. So your oxygen will be diffusing into your capillary over here. And label your arrow O, so put a little O there, that's your oxygen. Draw another arrow to show the direction in which the carbon dioxide diffuses, so we'll make that green, and the carbon dioxide is going to go out of the cell over here, and that can be a C. I'm not sure why the O disappeared. And the blood leaving the lungs and the capillary travels to another blood vessel and then to the heart. What's the name of the blood vessel and the part of the heart it will enter first? So you've got the left side of your heart, and you've got your pulmonary vein taking your blood into your left atrium first. That's where it's going to enter the heart. Okay. Then undo. Oh, okay, not sure why. It was there, okay. Close, okay. Then we can go look at a little experiment. Emil did an experiment to compare the rate of respiration in wood lice. They're tiny little sea crustaceans, small crustaceans. So you know that you might know them as roly-polies, and maggots, which are larvae of horseflies. The diagram shows how he set up this experiment. Lime water is a clear liquid, and it goes cloudy when carbon dioxide is present. So basically, it's just yeah, it goes cloudy. So if you see that the lime water goes cloudy, that means that there is carbon dioxide that's being produced by each one of these. Okay. Let's have a look at this setup. So we've got the bung, which is just like there to stopper the top of the test tube. The gauze platform that keeps the live maggots out of the lime water, and then you've got the same setup looking at the wood lice, and you've got 2 of each setup just in case. So just why Emil uses 4 tubes in his experiment rather than 2. Okay, so in science, it's always important to repeat your experiments and make sure that you're getting a large enough sample size for you to make any kind of statement about your findings. So in this case, if you have A and B with maggots and C and D with wood lice, you're doubling your sample size and just making sure that your test is true. Like you're making sure that it's giving you the correct, giving you accurate results. Describe 3 variables that Emil will need to keep the same in his experiment. So anything that could sort of affect the rate of respiration, I'd say maybe keeping the number of maggots, the number of wood lice, the age of the maggots and the age of the wood lice. Like I know with maggots, like they can grow very, very quickly, and so having very small maggots versus very big maggots, you would have a different outcome as far as how much carbon dioxide they're going to be producing. For wood lice, I think just maintaining the same number of adult wood lice is effective because they don't do a whole lot of change in their lives. They just sort of molt and get bigger. So if they're the same size, temperature's a big one. So making sure that they're both being exposed to the same temperature is important because that can quite rapidly affect the kind of carbon dioxide production that you're going to have. Then maybe even whether or not the experiment's running long enough, giving the organisms food will also affect how much carbon dioxide they're going to be able to produce at the end of the day. But have a think. Like as long as you're giving valid reasons for why these variables are being controlled, that is generally good enough to get a mark there. Emil timed how long it took for the lime water to go cloudy in each tube. These are the results. So in A, you had 6 minutes, B, a pretty similar 6.5 minutes, and C and D around 8.5 to 9 minutes. Okay. Draw a results table and write Emil's results. So again, be looking for a table that has your, I'd say, starting off with your 2 columns. Oh, I don't know why it's disappeared. 2 columns, one being for your A and B, well, for your, no, actually, I'm rethinking it now. Oh, I wish it was like the other one, you could just erase the whole thing. Anyway, here you could say that, I'm going to draw the exact same thing now, it's crazy. So here you would say, okay, is it going to be, did it contain maggots or wood lice? And so you go maggots and then wood lice. There's going to be more than 2, so each one of these is going to be like split into 2 as well. And then you give so this is like organism, and then you'll put the little heading organism over here, and then over here it's going to be your time, and then you give the time here, 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 and here, and yeah, that would be good enough for recording all the things that you need to record here for this testing. Okay, and then write a conclusion that Emil can make from his result, and you can say that your maggots produce more carbon dioxide than your wood lice because they're able to make the water more cloudy in a significantly lower amount of time. But that kind of checks out because your maggots are in a relatively higher period of metabolic rate and change because they're still growing nice and quickly, and they need to be able to process and grow as quickly as possible. So it makes sense that they would be able to produce more carbon dioxide more quickly. All right. Now moving on to chapter 5, all on sexual reproduction. Okay, moving on to the first question. I made a note for you guys, and it's in bold here in both of these questions, that you have to look at 3 ways that egg cells and 3 ways that sperm cells are different from other cells in the human body. The most pronounced one is that they're both gametes, so they both have half the number of chromosomes in them as when compared to a normal cell in the human body. For your egg cell is much larger than your average cell in your body, and then you can talk about the stuff over here about the exercise full stop, and it's got a large store of food in its cytoplasm, which is not a normal thing for normal cells to have. For sperm cells, you can talk about the chromosomes again. You can talk about the fact that it has a flagella and the fact that it's able to move around. It is a very unique shape for a cell to be able to have this arrangement that allows it to be mobile. But again, you need to give 3 differences. Just 3 for each one of these cells. It's very specifically asks for 3. So please, again, another reminder to read your questions carefully. Okay. Then, how many chromosomes will there be in a human zygote? So once they fuse together, that's when the zygote is formed, and then it'll have 46 chromosomes again. Okay. Explain why it is important that an egg cell and a sperm cell only have half the number of chromosomes, so that when they do come together, they don't produce offspring with an uneven number of chromosomes or an irregular number of chromatic pairs. This can happen sometimes, but it's generally leads to a genetic disease or genetic syndrome. And so for the correct number of chromosomes in a zygote to form, there needs to be exactly half the number of chromosomes in a sperm cell and the other half in an egg cell. Okay. Then the reproductive system of males. And name the parts of the reproductive system that each of these, and name the part of the male reproductive system that has each of these functions. So which part makes the sperm cells? That'll be your testes. Carries the sperm from where they are made into the urethra. That will be your sperm duct, and then makes the sugary fluid for sperm cells to swim in. That'll be your seminal vesicle. Okay, then have a look at your female reproductive system. Name the parts of the female reproductive system that has each of these functions. Makes the egg cells. It'll be your ovary. Where the fertilization happens, it'll be the oviduct. Where the zygote develops into a baby, it'll be the uterus. A couple of you are calling this the womb, but please refer to it as your uterus instead. Thank you. What happens to the egg cell? Okay, name the parts of the reproductive system in which fertilization happens. Again, it's your oviduct in here. Then what is an embryo? It is a cluster of cells that will eventually become a fetus if it is implanted into the uterine lining. Where does the embryo develop into your fetus and then a baby? That is in your uterus here. And if you want to be more specific, your uterine lining. Okay. Then here, where does the uterus start? Why does the uterus start growing thick and spongy as the egg cell develops into an ovary? This is in anticipation for the implantation of that little embryo into the uterine wall that provides the kind of attachments and environment that is required for the development of the fetus, the embryo into a fetus, and then into a full-grown baby at the end of the day. What happens to the uterus lining if the egg is not fertilized? It starts to break down and will be lost through the vagina once every month. Okay. Then these two, 6 and 7, they have the same answer generally. So how often does an egg cell leave an ovary in the adult woman? There can be cases where more than one egg is released sort of every 28 days, but in general, we're looking at the release of at least one egg every 28 days that gets this process going. How often does menstruation happen in an adult woman? The same. So it's about 28 days. How often does it happen? It happens every 28 days. The period over which menstruation happens can be a bit more variable, but the cycle sort of repeats itself every 28 days. Okay, now let's have a look. We're going to finish off this chapter today. So I'm expecting you to finish 5.4 all the way to the end of chapter questions for this chapter, because we're going to be finishing up with biology today for book 8 and swiftly moving on to chemistry. Okay, from embryo to baby. So the embryo, that we assume that it has now implanted into the lining of the uterus and is preparing to become a fetus and then eventually a full-grown baby. Two very important components of this whole process are your placenta and your amnion. So when it sinks, I'm gonna make this a bit bigger for myself, and hopefully it will be easier for you to follow along. When it sinks into the uterus wall, the embryo is only the same size as the egg cell, so it hasn't really gotten any bigger, but it has divided itself a whole bunch of times within that little space, but it hasn't gotten much bigger. It has not grown at all, however, it is now made up of many tiny cells rather than one big cell. These little cells were made as the zygote divided over and over and over again. The food stored in the cells provides the energy for them to do this. To grow and develop, the embryo now needs more food. A special organ develops and allows it to obtain food and oxygen from its mother's blood. This organ is the placenta. You got it over here. Okay, and that goes all over. The placenta is like dare I say it, but like a USB port that allows for the transfer of nutrients and oxygen across this blood barrier over here. But it's not like your food is going directly into the baby. It is the dissolved nutrients and minerals and oxygen that's in your blood that then passes across this barrier into the placenta and then through the umbilical cord into the baby. Okay. And so yeah, that's the placenta is basically there to attach the baby to the mother, and the umbilical cord is just there to attach the placenta to the baby at the end of the day. Okay. And then the amnion is the bag that keeps the baby sort of suspended in the uterus, and it's filled with amniotic fluid, which is mostly made up of water. So yeah, I mean, it's my nose. Give me a second. Sorry guys, I didn't have my tissues near me, so I had to quickly run over my nose. Yeah, okay, so the big parts of this shift from embryo to fetus and then to baby, the big the big tools that allow that to happen are your placenta, umbilical cord, and your amnion, and then the amnion is filled with amniotic fluid. Okay, so have a look at these questions, but they should all be answered here within this little section over here. Fetal development. So by the time it's 6 weeks old, the embryo is about 4 millimeters long, and it has all of its major organs that have started to develop. It's very basic, but everything is kind of there to just get bigger and eventually become self-sufficient. At 8 weeks old, the embryo is about 13 millimeters long. It's already beginning to move slightly, so it's looking like this. At 11 weeks old, the body's organs have developed, and the embryo has now become a fetus. Okay, it's about 50 millimeters long, and it is moving quite vigorously now. So little hands and little feet, they're able to start to move around and whatnot. Most fetuses have finished and growing and developing by about 38 or 39 weeks after fertilization has happened, and the baby is now ready to be born. Okay, so this is only a view of the first sort of 11 weeks, but it takes all the way up to 38 to 39 weeks to actually be born after that. Okay, birth a few days before before it's born, the baby usually turns so it is lying head downwards, so it'll be leaving the uterus through the vagina head first. The muscles in the wall of the uterus contract and get shorter. They make the opening of the uterus wider so the baby can pass through. When the muscles contract in different ways, they push the baby out through the opening of the uterus and through the vagina. Okay. This is all mostly asking you how long it takes for a fetus to develop or a embryo to become a fetus, and how long after fertilization most babies are born, and then asking you how to describe how the muscles in the uterus will help a baby to be born. All of these things have been answered. I've just read through them. Growth and development. Soon after fertilization, the zygote begins to divide. The single cells divide to form 2 cells, and then 4 cells, like is being described here, and so on. As the baby grows into a fetus and the fetus grows into a baby, the cell division continues. Each cell grows, then divides, grows, then divides, over and over again. This carries on all through adulthood until a person reaches adulthood and they stop growing. It doesn't mean that the cells aren't replaced, but you're not actively getting larger. You're just now sort of replacing the cells that you lose every day. So yeah, it's just exponential growth. So you're gonna get 1 cell becomes 2, and then 2 cells then each divide into another 2, which gives you 4, and so on and so on and so on. Development. The change from a zygote to adult does not involve any growth. It also involves development. Not only growth, but it also involves development. As a tiny embryo develops, its organs gradually form. For example, it develops a heart, lungs, and a brain. When a baby is born, it has all of its organs, but development continues. Its muscles become stronger as it learns to crawl, walk, and then run. As its brain develops, as it learns to talk and play with toys. Each person is an individual, and each of us develop in slightly different ways and at slightly different paces. The chart below shows the stages at which chart shows the main stages in development that everyone passes through. Notice that there are no sharp changes from one stage to another. It's a spectrum. So like a normal baby would develop into a toddler at about 1 year old, and then a small child, I suppose, would develop from a toddler at about 3 to 4 years old. But this is just averages. It's not like a necessarily development is different for everyone. It happens a bit faster for some, a bit slower for some others, but in general, this is kind of where we place childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. Okay. The message is these are the main stages in a person's development. Have a look at the million cells in your body. Where did they come from? I'm sure we have answered that above. Look at the chart. By what age have most people become adults? So about 20, by the looks of it, from this thing. Adolescence. This just deals with the changes in your secondary sexual characteristics. Sometimes it changes in your reproductive organs. The hormones that are being produced by your testes and your ovaries, they begin to influence how your body looks and how it grows, and these are all characteristics that are kicked into gear by your body being exposed to testosterone and estrogen. So in girls, the menstruation begins. Hormones produced by the reproductive organs change in the body's shape as the breast develops and the hips widen. Hair begins to grow in the armpits and other parts of the body. In boys, sperm production begins. Hormone produced by the reproductive organ causes the body shape to change as the shoulders broaden. The voice becomes deeper. Hair begins to grow on the face, armpits, and other parts of the body. Changes in the brain. The brain does not grow any larger during adolescence, but there is quite a lot of reorganization in the brain, which makes a person think and feel differently from when they were a child. The person becomes better at making decisions and planning ahead. The ability to think logically improves, which is a time when people may find that they can learn more quickly. Okay, so yeah, you're just used to learning more things more often, I guess. Emotions may become stronger. People may worry more. They may begin to feel more romantic feelings. They become more self-aware. Yeah, it's a crazy time. Puberty's mad, but there's just a lot happening in your body, and understanding that and being okay with it is probably the best thing for everyone's mental health. During adolescence, there's often a very strong need for approval by friends and others. Young people may want to be like a role model. This can be stressful if they set themselves impossible standards, perhaps trying to be more like someone they see on television. Yeah, and I think it has just gotten worse now that we have our social medias and whatnot present all the time. Yeah, just no, everyone's more worried about how they appear to everyone else than they are about how you appear to everyone else. So most people are thinking more about how they are interpreted by other people than how you are being interpreted by other people. So yeah, just be yourself. It's a crazy, great, terrible, amazing time in your life, and you don't be scared to just be who you are. Okay. Lifestyle and health. Okay, everyone is different. Some of these differences are the result of genes that we inherit from other people. Each of us, unless we have an identical twin, has a different set of genes from everyone else. You will learn more about genes in stage 9. So the next book. There are many things that affect the kind of person that you are, and that make you different from everyone else. For example, your appearance and personality are affected by what you eat, any illness that you have, or any drugs that you take. Okay, so drugs in this case being medication. Okay, have a look at this. These are scenario questions, so I want you to try answer them yourself before we go through them. But yeah, I think with the context that you have up until this point, I don't think it would be hard to answer them. Drugs and health. A drug is something that affects the way that your body works, which is a very broad definition of what a drug is, but yeah, anything that chemically alters your body is considered a drug. Some drugs are very useful, for example antibiotics, which kill harmful bacteria in the body. Without antibiotics, many more people would die of diseases caused by bacteria, which we have discussed in a previous chapter. Sorry, I'm thinking about the older kids. They've just done a chapter on antibiotics. Some drugs are necessary for health. but are not really harmful either if taken in moderation. For example, many people enjoy drinks like coffee and Coca-Cola, which contain caffeine. Caffeine can make you feel more alert and awake. Some drugs are harmful, for example, nicotine in cigarettes has many damaging effects on health. Okay, and then we go through the effects of nicotine yet again, looking at the problems that it causes for men, the problem that it causes for women, pregnant women, the fetus in a pregnant woman, and the brain of a fetus that is inside of a pregnant woman as well. So have a look at these, they'll help you answer the questions that come over here. And yeah, make sure that you are reading this graph carefully when you're answering the questions as well. The end of unit questions, which I'd also like you to do, are here, and we are now done with chapter 5. And then we're going to move on to chemistry, hopefully next week. I'm going to send, because now I don't think I've asked you to prepare yourself for a test on chapter 4 just yet. So you're probably going to be watching this on Tuesday. So I would like you to prepare to do your test on chapter 4 for Thursday this week. And then I would like you to write your test on the reproductive cycle on next week Monday. So please be prepared for that. It will be in the email that I send you to remind you about your work. But just that you're hearing it from me as well, just make a note of that and please be prepared. Okay, but I hope that answers all the questions. Next week we will do a quick introduction into particle theory because I know it is your last week before holiday, and I know we'll have to cover it again next week anyway. So please just bear with, and hopefully we can make a little bit of headway into chemistry before you guys go on break. Okay, thanks guys. I'll hear from you next week. Okay, bye.